mere fact that he wasn't even communicating with Gino and with his lineup enough, that was enough for them to say, you're not doing enough for us. And now, to step further, we need to be brought to these shows, and you should buy this some jewelry.
He then asks his mother to buy him a Glock ASAP, and telling her, like, go now. So she then responds, okay, what's wrong?
There seems to be something new going down with the YNW Melly case every day that the court trial goes on. Granted, people are just happy that the case is happening after the nearly 5-year wait for it to commence. But now that it's going on, no one knows what to expect, as both sides are essentially waging war to try and prove their side of the case is accurate. So what's been happening lately? Well, some stories are being called out, and some people think a dismissal is on the horizon.
But first, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload from us. And with that being said, let's get straight into the video.
Number 3, gunshot placement. Let's start out with some of the key witnesses that testified recently. During the second week of the Florida rapper YNW Melly trial for the 2 murders of his fellow YNW Collective rappers, the prosecution started to focus on the fatal wounds. Assistant State Attorney Christine Bradley called Dr. Rebecca M. McDougall and Dr. Adrian Sauter, the pathologist who performed the victims' autopsies, to the stand on Tuesday. Bradley said the direction of the gunshot wound showed Demons fatally shot Christopher Juvie Thompson Jr. and Anthony Sack Chaser Williams on October 26, 2018 in Broward.
So this is gunshot wound C, which was on the back of the right shoulder. Okay, the abrasion collar around that wound is not hemorrhagic. What that tells me is that there is no circulation to that part of the body when that gunshot wound is inflicted.
McDougall said that she performed Williams' autopsy. There is no way for me to tell you what the time frame between wounds was, McDougall said. Bradley had argued that the left to right direction of some of the gunshot wounds contradicted the allegation that they had been the victim of a drive-by shooting. McDougall said that she did find that one of the projectiles entered the left side of Williams' neck, traveled through his brain, and exited through the top right of his head. McDougall said that this left to right shot was fatal.
So this is the left lung. There's a trajectory rod through it showing the pathway of the projectile. What is interesting in this photograph is that there's absolutely no hemorrhage around any of those wounds. Okay, your lungs are very vascular, right? Because your lungs are responsible for taking the oxygen out of the air you breathe and pushing it into your blood, right? In the really small sacs in your lung. So an injury to your lung is going to bleed a lot, okay, if your heart is beating.
The jury had already seen surveillance videos showing that when they left the New Era recording studio in Fort Lauderdale, Williams was in the front passenger seat of the Jeep Compass, Demons was in the left rear seat, and Thomas was in the right rear seat. Sauter said she performed Thomas's autopsy. She said Thomas also suffered a fatal shot to the head, and the entrance wound was on his left cheek, and the path was from left to right. The heart was not beating at the time this wound was inflicted, Sauter said about one of the gunshot wounds Thomas suffered. The video also shows Bortlen Henry driving the gray Jeep. Another video shows Henry arriving at Memorial Miramar Hospital, and Thomas, age 19, and Williams, 21, were dead inside the Jeep Compass, according to prosecutors. The jury also saw a video of Henry telling a Miramar detective that they had been the victims of a drive-by shooting. He said the shooting was on Miramar Parkway and the shooters had fired at the Jeep's passenger side. Detectives reported an expert's bullet trajectory analysis showed the right-to-left path of the bullets that Henry had described did not match the left-to-right pattern of the wounds, according to prosecutors. Jurors also learned that cell phone data showed them on Pines Boulevard and Pembroke Road, in a desolated area where detectives did find evidence of a shooting, according to prosecutors. Bradley said this is where Henry and Demons staged the shooting. So what does this all really mean when we boil it down? Simply put, the story that Melly and Cortland were telling doesn't line up with the evidence. They said that the crew died in a drive-by, and yet it doesn't appear that this is the case. And if they can't back up their story, the jury will think they're guilty, which is obviously what they don't want. Number 2, gang affiliation. Young Thug, French Montana, and several other rappers were named in text read in court during the YNW Melly trial to prove the Florida native was affiliated with the Blood Gang. This is something that the prosecution has been trying to do since the trial began. Prosecutors accused Melly of being associated with the Bloods and explained that this was the alleged motive for the murder of his two friends, Christopher YNW Juvie Thomas Jr. and Anthony YNW Sack Chaser Williams. Detective Danny Polo explained that gang members use rappers to bring in money and fame, and in return, give support so they can get into certain venues. He then read out multiple text messages sent between GBK gang members Goon and Herc to young Sack Chaser Howard that mentioned Young Thug, Boozy Badass, French Montana, Hula Santana, Quandorondo, and more. The prosecution obtained 123 text messages to help prove that Melly was a member of the Bloods. According to reporter Bryson Paul, Detective Polo alleged that Huese is an active Bloods gang member based on a text thread with Goon, but couldn't confirm or deny if Montana was also a part of the gang. Another text read, "You beloved was set is at Young Thug pushing now," and also added that Quandorondo lame ass hated on a previous message. Detective Polo also believed that YNW Melly was being recruited by two different G-Shine Blood gang members based on text conversation of Gino and Herc. Also, a text GBK member Goon sent Melly hours after the murders of YNW Juvie and Sack Chaser that read, "You straight? I just heard what happened last night," was also read in court. Now, as the defense team noted, just because Melly did gang signs all the time, as many pictures showed, or had friends who were Bloods, doesn't mean that he was one himself. And they even gave examples of those who paid reference to the gangs of their area without being involved themselves. Like when Serena Williams used to do her crip walk on the tennis court. However, as you likely know, there are plenty of rappers who do have connections with gangs, big and small, and that can lead to questionable activities from them. If the prosecution can further tie Melly to the gangs and establish why it might be a motive for murder, then they might have something big on their hands. Or at the very least, lead the jury to suspect something dirty about Melly. Number 1, where's the DNA and murder weapon? If you're wondering how everything might end in a dismissal, here's the situation. It all started with a tweet that said this: YNW Melly's DNA wasn't found on or in the Jeep where the shooting took place until they recently found it this month on the door handle of the car. There was also no gunfire residue found on YNW Melly. At the crime scene, .40 caliber bullets were recovered, but to this day, there's no firearm in evidence known to be the murder weapon. When you hear some of this, you could see why those on Melly's side is excited. This is key evidence that could prove or disprove that he was involved in the murders. There are even rumors that the case could get dismissed because of it. But here's the rub. No one else is reporting this that we can find. Furthermore, some of these statements aren't as simple as they appear. For example, the DNA evidence of not being in the car is odd, but not as important as you might think, as there is video evidence of Melly being in the car with Cortland and the victims. Plus, they did find the DNA evidence to prove he was there, so that's all they need. As for the murder weapon, well, that is bad that they don't have it, but Melly was stated by himself and Cortland to have gotten out of the car after the drive-by they claim happened to clear his head. That's more than enough time to get rid of a weapon. Plus, he could have gotten rid of the gunshot residue in multiple ways with the time he had. Plus, let's not forget Melly had a chance to get the trial thrown out via mistrial not too long ago, after his defense team felt that the prosecution did a miscarriage of justice with some witnesses in the jury. But despite all their protests, the judge kept the court case going. Not to mention, the case isn't over yet, and the prosecution might have some truly crucial evidence to show after they set everything up, and proven that Melly and Cortland have lied about various elements of the case. This is the dangerous part of the internet right here. You can easily post an update from the case, but if you don't cite your source, which this tweet didn't, it's hard to take seriously. And there you have it, everyone, a look at some of the latest developments in the YNW Melly case and how it could change things as a whole, should they continue to unfold like this. Do you feel that things are gearing up for a crescendo on one side or the other? Do you feel that Melly's side might have a trump card or two that will blow the prosecution's case to pieces? Or will the prosecution come out on top when all is said and done? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.